With that, let's talk more about this now with John Manyike, who's Old Mutual's Head of Financial Education. Thank you very much for your time this evening. And on the back of the fact that inflation has reached a 13-year high, the Reserve Bank is expected to increase interest rates tomorrow. How does a consumer navigate the current financial playing field, given the fact that your report had indicated that consumers have remained resilient thus far?
No, absolutely. I mean, consumers have remained resilient. We're also seeing a recovery in terms of people's personal earnings. When we look at this time around, 34% of people are saying they're earning less than what they were earning before COVID. And when you compare that number with last year's number, which was around about 53%. So that's certainly an improvement. But we're also generally seeing, people just being optimistic about their financial position. And that resilience is actually paying dividends, because there's certainly a relationship between people's confidence in their ability to make financial decisions, as well as the lower stress and the propensity to save, and which is a good sign.
That's interesting, because the Savings and Investment Monitor also indicated that the confidence that the consumer has in the economy is not moving drastically up or down, but it's stable, but it's still lower than it was before COVID-19. So there's no confidence in the economy, but the consumer feeling a little bit better about their financial health?
No, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the financial position outlook, I mean, they believe that their situation will look better over the next 6 months. And this is in spite of all these pressures that we're seeing in terms of food inflation, looking at interest rates, looking at fuel. South Africans are just optimistic. And we honestly think that's a very positive sign, for people to remain resilient and positive. But it's not because they're not doing anything. I mean, there are different things that South Africans are doing. We're seeing people even resorting to gambling. About 44% of people saying that they've resorted to gambling to make ends meet. Of course, it comes with its own risk. We're seeing also a behavior that's risk inclined. People are more prepared to invest in cryptocurrencies, about 12 months from now. Again, that renewed optimism and people's appetite for more higher risk just shows that we're beginning to change the way we are looking at money, and that's why people are prepared to take risks.
Okay, so people are taking risks to make more money in these tough times. Are you seeing a culture of saving that is growing at all?
Look, of course, I mean, when you look at the number of people who continue to invest in informal savings, about 63% said they belong to more than one stokvel. So clearly, the stokvels remain very popular. I think what's important is to make sure that we encourage stokvelers to partner with the financial sector in order to benefit or to leverage formal instruments which will offer them a compound interest. Because if that money is kept, at home, that money is not growing, and there's a risk of losing that money. So very, very important to look at also the reasons why people prefer stokvels. Some of these stokvels actually become almost a lending vehicle, because they borrow from the same stokvels and pay interest up to 50%, which is not cheap. It's not cheap money to borrow in that fashion. So we certainly need to look at some of those reasons why people prefer stokvels.
Mm-hmm. Now, looking at the fact that we're going to be getting an interest rate increase tomorrow from the South African Reserve Bank, are there any concerns by yourself or your team about people starting to default on repayments simply because they are too high or getting high, and of course it's coming out of a disposable income that doesn't really exist anymore for many households?
Look, I think we are at an intersection, and people would have to make some hard choices. And that's why it's important to partner with a financial advisor so that you can prove the quality of your financial decisions. Yes, of course, I mean, we are seeing people moving to these loyalty reward programs. We're seeing people switching to cheaper supermarket brands, the cheaper TV or streaming options. I mean, those are positive things that people can do. But I think, with more pressure, we're likely going to see more people going more resorting into online gambling and people looking for high risk investments, which has its pros and cons. And that's why it's important to partner with a financial advisor so that you don't test the water in the river with both your feet.
What about young people? How are they faring financially? What did the monitor have to say about that?
I think the interesting thing there around perhaps young people is more around the sandwich generation. These are people who are looking after their immediate family as well as the extended family. That although that number has dropped to 39% this year compared to 43% that we saw in 2021, but that could be a case of nothing to offer, because you cannot give what you don't have. But it's certainly something we've been advocating for young people to also look at ways in which they can empower, their families, maybe to help them start a small business or some kind of income so that they can become financially independent.
John, as always, thank you very much for your insights. That is John Manyike, who's Old Mutual's head of financial education. Here's a look